Well, the government has given the green light for an inquiry into foreign interference into Australian universities. The Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee will investigate allegations over Chinese operations targeting Australian academics and influencing research projects. Joining me now, Liberal Senator Alex Antic. Senator Antic, always great to have you on the show. You've supported calls for a parliamentary inquiry into foreign interference in universities. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks, Gleeso, and thanks for having me back on. Look, this is really pleasing, actually. You're right, I did. I was one of many parliamentarians that did call for this inquiry when that news last week came through on the Australian report from Shari Marksam that the Chinese Communist Party had been using what they're calling this 1,000 Talents Plan to effectively recruit academics across the world, including the United States, Australia and other places, for the purposes of creating and siphoning off intellectual property and technology. So this is really pleasing stuff. And of course, it comes on the back of the previous announcement in relation to the government being able to introduce legislation to rip up agreements between state, local and territory governments. So what we're seeing is a really strong play from the Morrison government to sort of crack down on some of these foreign interference actors in Australia. But this one's particularly pleasing because we have seen examples of these tentacles creeping into our university system. It's designed to try and determine the nature and extent of those foreign actors' influence in our universities, but also very pleasingly, it's going to investigate campus culture. So some of the stuff we saw with the Drew Pavlou affair at University of Queensland, issues of freedom of speech for the student body, these sorts of issues are going to be front and centre in this inquiry. It's going off to the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, as you said, which is very ably chaired by Andrew Hastie. This inquiry is in really good hands. This is going to be a great thing for the university sector.
Alex, I've been pretty keen to ask you what you thought of last week's press club speech by the deputy. The deputy dog, you know, the deputy diplomat from China. There was certainly varying reports. I mean, there was commentary from people like Greg Sheridan and Paul Kelly, who basically said that it was a farce. Peter Jennings, he also believed that it was a farce. What did you make of it?
Well, look, I saw snippets of it, and I watched large portions of it through lunch, like many did. And look, I have to say, I think it's a very difficult task for someone to front up and put themselves in front of a press club when perhaps they're not used to it. So I think some of the answers that were thrown up were, as has been described, pretty preposterous. But it is very difficult. I mean, you know, it's not very often that the Chinese Communist Party allow officials to be grilled and given the third degree like that. So it was always going to be a recipe for intrigue and interest. I don't know that we got many answers other than to say that this organisation does have a habit of gilding the lily, and Aussies just aren't going to buy it anymore. And
a fresh probe into Australia's wine industry announced today by the Chinese. They're ratcheting up their punitive measures when it comes, or sanctions when it comes to trade with Australia.
Yeah, it seems to be. This is, of course, the second investigation, as it's being put by the Chinese, into our wine industry. Of course, the first was a couple of weeks ago and related to, you know, sort of anti-dumping allegations by our wine producers, which of course is preposterous. And, you know, I know that well coming from, you know, the state that produces the finest wine in the world, South Australia. It's ludicrous. This is a premium product. It is, you know, it is not the sort of product that would be dumped on a market for the purposes of mechanical advantage. And so now we're seeing claims of, you know, the overt use of subsidies on particular quantities of wine. And of course, this comes on the back of, you know, relatively recent incursions into barley, 80% tariffs, and of course, a fifth abattoir being having the finger pointed at it as well, one of Australia's oldest running family-owned abattoirs, which, you know, has a great track record, as I understand it, in terms of producing quality produce. All of these things, of course, Gleeso, come in close proximity to some of the announcements we talked about earlier on, the foreign interference and the intrusion into unis inquiry. So I think we're right to be cynical about this. We've seen wolf warrior diplomacy played out significantly in the last 6 to 9 months, and I don't think this is any different.
And just quickly, I know you keep an eye on United States politics. Michael Moore, the left-wing documentary maker, came out this morning and basically said Trump's not only back in the race, his base is well and truly sort of fired up, and he's suggesting that unless the Democrats get fair income and maybe drop their complacency, that Trump may be back in the White House in the first Tuesday of November.
Yeah, I saw that, and of course Michael Moore was one of the few in 2016 that called the election prior to everyone else.
Yes.
But look, I have to say I'm going to do my community service for today, and for the lefties out there that are priming themselves to see Joe Biden in the White House in 2 months. I've got sad news for you. Donald Trump, as far as I'm concerned, is going to win this election and win it comfortably. And for all the reasons Michael Moore, and I saw Sir Linton Crosby today in the AFR made mention of, the ground game is outstanding. The narrative is positive. And you compare and contrast the two conventions, the Republican convention, which was really a masterclass in campaigning, compared to the Democrat convention, which was tired and stale. It was a complete snorefest. There is polar opposites in the message. One's anti-Trump only, and the other one is a positive message of hope. And I think what we will see increasingly is that margin shrink. And momentum's everything in politics, and I think the momentum's well and truly with the Trump camp at the moment. So it's going to be 4 more years for Donald Trump.
Well, there you go. Senator Alex Antic, thank you for joining us tonight on Sky News Across Australia. Always appreciate your insights.
Thanks, Gleeso.